Did you really think Earth would just let that go? Growled Admiral Corrin, his voice echoing through the chamber as he faced the assembled members of the Galactic Council. They sat there, a blend of shocked faces, shimmering scales, and twitching antennae, each of them dumbfounded by Earth's sudden, brutal retaliation. The Council had underestimated Earth. That much was clear. For decades, the galaxy's great powers, led by the esteemed Council seated high above the fray in their sprawling towers, had relegated Earth to a minor player in galactic affairs. Its unique aggressive tendencies and penchant for innovation were simply brushed off as quirks of an eccentric species from a quiet corner of the galaxy. But as it turned out, humans had a long memory and a willingness to hold a grudge longer than any other species. The issue had started with a seemingly innocuous trade dispute, one that the Council initially thought Earth would ignore or handle diplomatically. They were wrong. Earth had played along for a while, taking the subtle insults, the restrictions, the demeaning bargains. But then came the blockade. The Council had cut off Earth's most vital space lanes, practically strangling its trade network under the guise of maintaining order and protecting galactic stability. The humans were left with nothing but the silent threat that, if they overstepped, harsher penalties would follow. For any other species, that would have been the end of it. But humans, they had plans. "It was just a matter of time, wasn't it?" murmured High Arbiter Rishal, his mottled green skin paling as the gravity of the situation settled over him. They weren't going to forget, especially after the embargo. As Corrin spoke, the monitors in the chamber flickered to life, displaying images captured by unmanned survey probes and intelligence satellites stationed near Earth's territories. What the Council members saw on those screens made even the most hardened warriors shift uncomfortably in their seats. On the first monitor was an array of colossal warships, their exteriors coated in sleek black armor that seemed to drink in the light. Each ship was adorned with Earth's emblem, a simple blue sphere dotted with green and white, and pulsed with the glow of high-powered energy shields. Admiral Corrin, arms crossed over his chest, watched as the Council members murmured among themselves. Some tried to mask their horror, while others openly gawked. Earth's retaliation had been calculated and, above all, precise. The humans hadn't just retaliated in kind. They had mastered the art of guerrilla space warfare, hijacking key supply routes and hitting every choke point that fed the Council's territories. "Explain," demanded a councillor, his orange eyes narrowing at Corrin. He was a Karian, one of the races that had openly mocked Earth's technological advancements for being crude and unsophisticated. "How did they manage this without us noticing? Where did they get the resources for those weapons?" "Simple," Corrin replied, a half-smirk tugging at his mouth. "They adapted. Turns out if you back a human into a corner, they don't surrender. They innovate." He paused, relishing the unease in the councillor's eyes. "You might not have noticed the signs, but Earth never stopped building. They just got a lot better at hiding it. The humans had used their isolation to perfect their technologies. They developed stealth engines capable of evading the best Council tracking equipment, hacked the Council's own surveillance systems, and mined every unclaimed asteroid belt within their reach. With each move, they had inched closer to a hidden objective, all under the Council's nose. And now they were ready to show what they had accomplished. The monitors switched to another feed. This one showed a massive structure orbiting just outside Earth's solar system, a colossal orbital platform bristling with weaponry. Alongside it, smaller vessels darted around, each outfitted with experimental energy cannons and hull designs the Council members had never seen before. It was a fortress, an undeniable show of force from a species that had grown tired of taking orders. Admiral Corrin leaned forward, his eyes scanning the Council chamber. "Earth's industries went dark after the embargo, didn't they? Production reports, mining outputs, everything plummeted. You assumed they'd collapsed." He shook his head. "They didn't collapse, they just went underground. built their bases in asteroid belts, set up facilities on moons, and redirected every ounce of their resources to this project. While you celebrated your control, Earth was transforming its economy, its society, its military. There was a collective inhale among the council members as the realization sank in. The humans hadn't merely survived, they'd evolved. The isolation had turned them into something the council had never anticipated, a formidable, technologically advanced power with a taste for vengeance. And they've issued a statement, Corrin added, a glint of satisfaction in his eye. The monitors now displayed a single line of text, a message that had been intercepted from an encrypted human transmission. It read, "If you seek peace, leave us to it. Interfere again, and we'll ensure the galaxy remembers why you don't cross Earth." High Arbiter Rashul cleared his throat, his voice strained. "They're threatening us." "No," Corrin said, almost amused. "They're warning you. There's a difference." For a moment, silence fell over the chamber as the Council's leaders absorbed the magnitude of Earth's retaliation. They were no longer dealing with a minor power, a small planet of peculiar bipeds. Earth had grown into something else entirely, a threat the Council could no longer ignore, yet could hardly afford to confront directly. In their arrogance, the Council had dismissed Earth's adaptability as a minor advantage at best, a quirk at worst. But now, as they watched the human ships and defences displayed in stark detail, they were forced to reckon with the consequences of their actions. They had awoken a species that refused to be dominated, that had transformed every insult, every blockade into fuel for something far more menacing. "What are we to do?" whispered one of the councillors, his gaze fixed on the screens. "We could negotiate, perhaps." His voice trailed off, uncertain. But Corrin's smile held no sympathy. He'd spent years stationed on Earth's outskirts, observing their world, learning their ways. He knew better than most what humans were capable of when provoked. Negotiation wasn't just a matter of signing agreements anymore, it was a question of whether the Council would admit its own vulnerability. "Negotiating with Earth now," he said quietly, "means treating them as equals, something I doubt this Council is ready to do." The councillors shifted uncomfortably, realizing the weight of Corrin's words. The galaxy was built on a hierarchy, a structure where each race had its place, its limitations. Treating Earth as an equal would disrupt that delicate balance, spark unease among allies, and potentially embolden other lesser-ranked planets to seek similar treatment. Still, the Council knew it had few options. The galaxy was vast, but its resources were finite, its trade routes precious. The humans, in their clever isolation, had mastered precisely the places and systems the Council relied on most. The room grew colder as the councillors sat, faced with a truth they had long refused to see. Earth, the tiny blue planet they once viewed as a galactic curiosity, now stood at the edge of its greatest power play. The very trade networks that had been used to strangle Earth had now become potential chokeholds for the Council itself, courtesy of humanity's retaliation. Councillor Threx, a being of coiled scales and bladed arms, hissed in irritation. "So, they've amassed ships and guns, Corrin. But surely you aren't suggesting we bow to this display? Humans are only so strong as the tools they build. Their minds are sharp, but physically they're weak." Admiral Corrin shook his head, unimpressed by Threx's arrogance. "Underestimating humans because they lack physical strength is exactly why they're standing against us now. Every weapon they've built, every trick they've learned, came from studying species stronger than them, species that underestimated their creativity and resilience." He leaned forward, letting his voice drop to a low growl. "They've turned that weakness into an advantage. You'd be wise to remember that." One of the newer councillors, a quiet Mian with translucent skin that shimmered under the chamber lights, cleared his throat. Our fleets outnumber theirs 20 to 1. Why not simply overpower them, cut off their system entirely, block every jump gate in the... Sector Earth can't fight the entire galaxy after all. Corrin allowed himself a grim chuckle. That's the thing. Earth's been watching us for years, studying our protocols, our combat methods, even our communications. They've learned enough about us to know our weaknesses. He gestured to the images on the monitors. Those ships of theirs aren't just defensive. They're designed to dismantle our formations, energy disruptors, drone swarms, something they call EMP shock rounds. They've engineered every part of their fleet specifically to exploit our vulnerabilities. And with their stealth tech, they could hit us before we even know they're there. Councillor Threx coiled, his scales bristling in disbelief. They've no right. Who gave them permission to meddle with technology beyond their rank? Corrin's gaze darkened. Permission? You think they waited for permission? He turned to the other councillors, scanning their uneasy faces. Humans didn't wait for approval. They just did. That's why you're all frightened right now, whether you admit it or not. Earth doesn't follow rules. If they feel they're unjust, they rewrite them. The tension in the room thickened as Corrin's words settled over the council. Even the more obstinate members were beginning to realize the stakes. Their initial blockade, meant to discipline Earth, had backfired. They were no longer dealing with a planet under their control, but a force outside their reach. High Arbiter Rashal broke the silence, his usual confidence replaced by a tremor of doubt. We could offer them incentives to ease tensions, trade routes, mining rights, maybe even limited council representation. That might pacify them. Corrin shook his head. The time for appeasement passed the moment we imposed that embargo. You treated them like a lesser species, and they've responded like one that has something to prove. Offering them scraps isn't going to cut it. They're done with playing the underdog. The councillors exchanged uneasy glances, their collective silence betraying a growing understanding that the old ways would not suffice. They had poked and prodded Earth for years, and now they had a tiger at their doorstep, one with fangs, bared, and no interest in returning to its cage. Suddenly, the room's communications console chimed, and an officer's face appeared on the central screen. His usually composed demeanour was marred by sweat and urgency. High Arbiter, Admiral, Earth's vessels have moved into a formation around the jump gate at Sector Z-19. They're blocking off one of our main trade routes. Murmurs erupted among the councillors. That particular jump gate connected the core sectors with outlying colonies, transporting valuable resources the Council depended on for its wealth and influence. To have that line severed, even temporarily, would disrupt trade across several major systems, causing an economic ripple effect. They wouldn't dare, Councillor Threx sneered, though his voice held a tremor of doubt. Wouldn't they? Corrin countered. They know exactly how much we rely on those trade routes. The blockade you imposed on them was meant to cripple Earth's economy, but in truth, it barely scratched them. They adapted. Now they're doing the same to us, and I don't think they'll stop until we take them seriously. Rashal's expression had shifted from disbelief to something more akin to resignation. Then, Admiral, what exactly do you propose we do? Recognize them as a legitimate power, Corrin replied, his words met with stunned silence. Acknowledge their independence, lift the restrictions, and open a direct line of diplomacy. It's either that, or we push them further. But if we choose to fight, we'll be doing so at a cost that none of us are prepared to pay. The Council erupted in protest. A chorus of voices clamoured over each other, insisting that such a concession would undermine the Council's authority, weaken their standing, and embolden other, lesser worlds. But Corrin remained unfazed, his gaze piercing through their objections. Think about what's happened here, he pressed, his voice unwavering. Earth was supposed to be a minor world, too insignificant to pose a threat. And yet they've built a fleet powerful enough to force this council to question its authority. They've proven that they can stand toe-to-toe with us. Ignoring that fact won't change it. The councillors quieted, their outrage simmering as they grappled with the reality Corrin was laying before them. The Galactic Council had built its power on the assumption that it could control or crush any planet that dared, disobeyed its rules. But Earth had rewritten the script, taking its punishment and transforming it into a weapon. The Council's own arrogance had birthed a rival unlike any other, a power that couldn't be cowed by threats or sanctions. Rashal looked at Corrin, his eyes heavy with the weight of an admission he didn't want to make. "You're asking us to respect them?" Corrin gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Respect? Yes. And something more. Acknowledge that they are our equals, maybe even our match." Silence fell over the chamber once more, this time colder, more final. It was a bitter pill, but the Council knew the alternative. Pushing Earth to its limits had only honed humanity's resolve. The more they tried to bend the humans, the stronger they seemed to become. To continue down this path would mean open conflict, a war where the Council's resources would be drained against a species that had proven time and again that it could turn the tide. "I don't like it," Threx muttered, his blade-like fingers curling into fists. "This is madness." "Madness," Corrin replied with a grim smile, "is underestimating them further. What you all have to decide now is whether you want to keep that door open or find it slammed shut in your face." The councillors shifted uncomfortably, the realization dawning that the time for dismissive gestures and casual threats had ended. The Galactic Council had to make a choice, either acknowledge Earth's newfound strength or face the consequences of further defiance. As the debate raged on in the council chambers, High Arbiter Rashal raised a hand to silence the assembly. He knew they were close to breaking point. The division between those who wanted to acknowledge Earth and those who wished to crush it had grown too wide. A decision had to be made, and swiftly, before Earth's retaliation escalated further. Before Rashal could speak, the communications console chimed again, interrupting the tense quiet. The same officer appeared, his face flushed. "High Arbiter, Councillors, Earth's fleet has issued a demand." A murmur of shock rippled through the chamber. It was unheard of for any non-member species to make demands of the Council, let alone one that had been blockaded. Rashal gestured for the officer to proceed. "What is their demand?" The officer hesitated, glancing at Corrin before reading the message. "Earth's fleet is calling for a direct negotiation with the Council. They request a diplomatic envoy and the lifting of all embargoes immediately. If we refuse, they warn that they will escalate by targeting specific Council assets across multiple sectors." Councillor Threx leaned forward, his voice laced with indignation. "Are they declaring war on us?" Corrin's eyes narrowed as he considered the message. "Not quite. This is Earth giving us an ultimatum. Accept them as equals or prepare for a conflict. They don't want a war, but they're ready for one if it comes to that." Rashal exhaled slowly, his gaze fixed on the view screen displaying Earth's formidable fleet. He had hoped the Council's display of power would subdue Earth, not ignite a challenge. But as Corrin had repeatedly reminded them, humans didn't respond to threats the way most species did. They retaliated with precision and conviction. The High Arbiter stood, facing the councillors. "We are at a crossroads. We can engage with Earth as they have asked, or we can deny them and prepare for a conflict that may destabilize the entire region." He scanned the room, gauging the reactions of each member. "I will hear any final objections before we proceed." Councillor Threx's eyes burned with defiance. "You'd let them dictate terms to us? What message does that send to every other planet under our protection? They'll see our weakness and rise up, just as Earth has." Corrin took a step forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Earth isn't trying to overthrow the Council. They want acknowledgement, respect. They've built something powerful in response to our oppression. If we refuse to recognize them now, we'll only validate their belief that the Council values control above fairness. Rashal nodded thoughtfully, absorbing Corrin's words. The Council's power had indeed been built on maintaining order, but that order had come at a cost. Earth's fierce independence, born out of isolation and ingenuity, had evolved into something formidable. Ignoring that now would be a grave miscalculation. I propose we send a diplomatic envoy to Earth, Rashal announced, silencing any remaining dissent. In doing so, we acknowledge their strength and open a path toward peaceful coexistence. It's time the Council demonstrated that it can adapt as well. Threx seethed, but his protest died in his throat as he saw the determination in Rashal's eyes. He knew the High Arbiter's decision was final. With the Council's reluctant approval, Corrin stepped forward, a hint of pride in his gaze. I'll lead the envoy myself. Rashal nodded. You are the best suited for this task, Admiral. But proceed with caution. Humanity's trust in us is strained. This will be a delicate negotiation. Corrin acknowledged the High Arbiter's words, though he felt a flicker of hope that Earth might be more willing to listen to someone who understood them. He had watched humanity evolve under pressure, growing not just stronger, but more unified. Now he had the chance to meet them face to face, not as a soldier preparing for war, but as a diplomat seeking peace. The journey to Earth's fleet was tense, each jump through space bringing Corrin closer to humanity's new bastion of power. Upon arrival, he marvelled at the sheer scale of their orbital defences, stations bristling with weapons, ships in perfect formation, and automated drones on constant patrol. Earth had crafted a fortress, and it was clear they were prepared to defend it with everything they had. Corrin shuttled aboard the flagship, a massive warship named Resolute. As he disembarked, he was greeted by Commander Ethan Hayes, a tall, lean figure with a calm yet calculating gaze. Hayes offered a nod of respect, his demeanour reflecting Earth's tempered readiness for either diplomacy or conflict. Admiral Corrin, Hayes greeted, extending a hand, a custom he knew would seem strange to the alien, but was intended as a gesture of goodwill. Welcome aboard the Resolute. We appreciate your willingness to meet. Corrin returned the gesture, taking Hayes's hand in a firm shake. Thank you, Commander. The Council recognises that circumstances have changed. We're here to find a resolution that respects Earth's position in the galaxy. Hayes gave a slight smile. Then we're on the same page, Admiral. Earth has no interest in destabilising the galaxy, but we won't be treated as lesser beings any longer. We demand respect, and we intend to protect our interests just as fiercely as any other sovereign power. As they walked through the corridors of the ship, Corrin noted the mixture of advanced technology and practical design. Earth's fleet was efficient, optimized for survival and resilience, rather than opulence. It was a fleet born of necessity and honed by purpose. Every crew member, from officers to technicians, moved with a quiet confidence that spoke to their unity and readiness. In the briefing room, Corrin and Hayes settled in for negotiations. Both sides knew what was at stake, and both understood that compromise would be essential. Over the next several hours, Corrin outlined the Council's offer: a full lifting of the embargo, recognition of Earth as an independent power, and the opening of new trade routes between Earth and the Council's core systems. Hayes, for his part, pressed for assurances that Earth's sovereignty would never again be challenged. We're prepared to contribute to galactic stability, but the Council must understand that Earth will not accept subjugation. We are equals in every way that matters. Corrin nodded, his respect for humanity growing with each exchange. He knew that Earth's demands were not born of pride, but of hard-won resilience. They had fought to survive, to thrive, even when the galaxy tried to shut them out. Now they were claiming their place with dignity and strength. By the end of the negotiations, an agreement was reached. Earth would be recognized as an equal member, and both sides would work to ensure that conflicts were resolved through diplomacy rather than force. The threat of war dissipated, replaced by a shared understanding. As Corrin prepared to leave, Hayes offered him a parting nod. "Admiral, thank you for hearing us out. I hope this marks the beginning of a new era, one where we move forward together, not as conquerors or subjects, but as allies." Corrin returned the nod, his respect for humanity undeniable. "Earth has proven itself beyond a doubt, Commander. I look forward to seeing what we can accomplish together." The shuttle departed Earth's fleet, carrying Corrin back to the Council with a message of unity, one forged not in submission, but in respect. And as he made his way home, Corrin knew one thing for certain. Earth's fierce resilience had reshaped the galaxy forever. The Council would never again underestimate humanity.